The Galactic Council convened in its grand amphitheater, a vast space ringed by tiers of representatives from the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. In their midst, a single topic had become an enduring joke: humanity. The delegates spoke of Earth as a curiosity, a planet populated by soft, short-lived creatures clinging to an insignificant world at the edge of a spiral arm. Their technology, while advancing rapidly by primitive standards, was decades, even centuries behind even the lesser galactic powers. Their bodies, fragile and inefficient, lacked the claws, fangs, hides, or venom that made many species formidable. Their biology offered no remarkable longevity, no superior strength or agility. Humans, in their estimation, were amusing precisely because they were irrelevant. A phrase passed easily among the delegates. "Give them another century. They'll barely reach parity with our abandoned colonies." Some laughed as they recalled humanity's first attempts at interstellar communication. Awkward signals beamed hopefully into the void, clumsy probes lost in the immensity of space. Their first ambassadors arrived in ships that crawled along at speeds most civilizations had surpassed millennia ago. When they spoke at the council for the first time, their declarations of unity and peaceful intent were met with polite applause but private derision. Even the council's internal archives categorized Earth as non-threatening, observation recommended. The more cynical delegates argued that no observation was required at all. "Humans barely threaten themselves," muttered a Threx diplomat, eliciting nods from other species who considered their own military histories far more brutal and worthy of respect. The Score, with their iron-scaled warriors, could not fathom why any species would care what humans thought or did. The Kshani, whose psychic abilities allowed them to sense intentions, dismissed humans as emotionally volatile and naive, a species driven by irrationality and short-term goals. Despite their curiosity about human cultural peculiarities, few took them seriously. The council treated human endeavors as a sideshow, a mildly entertaining diversion amid the serious negotiations of power and territory. The weaker species clustered around Earth, forming commercial networks to profit from trade with the eager but clumsy newcomers. More powerful species ignored them entirely. Their physiology became a subject of amusement at biological symposiums. "They suffer cellular decay at astonishing rates," a Kale biologist announced with dry amusement. "And yet they persist in breeding and rebuilding as if they had eternity before them." Laughter echoed in the council chambers when this was repeated. Their relatively short lifespans were seen as a weakness, a limitation that would prevent them from achieving true significance on the galactic stage. Earth's wars were another favorite punchline. While brutal by human standards, their conflicts appeared almost quaint compared to the galaxy's ancient wars of extinction and conquest. The Council remembered entire stars stripped of planets during their species' formative ages. By contrast, human wars seemed like regional disputes over trivial resources. Their weapons, crude and imprecise, relied on chemistry and kinetics, while most advanced civilizations had long abandoned such methods in favor of plasma, antimatter, and gravitic distortions. One delegate summed up the prevailing sentiment with cold amusement. "Humans are clever pets. Entertaining. But harmless." The phrase caught on. It spread not only in council halls but across the galaxy's networks. Humans became a metaphor for irrelevance, a species that could be safely ignored while the real powers shaped galactic destiny. Their emissaries, desperate to make trade agreements, were tolerated but rarely taken seriously. "Let them buy scraps," one merchant lord advised his peers. "Their hunger for advancement will drain their meager wealth long before they catch up." At social gatherings, even their optimism became a target for ridicule. "Human determination," said one diplomat mockingly, raising a glass. "May they work themselves to death before they matter." In the end, the consensus was simple and clear: humanity was amusing but inconsequential. Their world was rich in minor resources but not enough to invite annexation or conquest. Their people, adaptable but fragile, would always be at a disadvantage among species bred for harsher worlds and longer lives. And so the council laughed. They laughed as they dismissed human ambitions. They laughed as they ignored the warnings of a few outliers who cautioned against underestimating a species that learned fast and fought harder. To the galaxy, Earth remained an overlooked backwater, a source of fleeting entertainment, perhaps some minor trade goods, and nothing more. Even as humanity observed, learned, and quietly adapted, the galaxy continued to laugh, unaware that its greatest underestimation was unfolding right before their amused and indifferent eyes. While the galaxy laughed, humanity worked. Unseen by those who dismissed them, Earth scientists and engineers studied every scrap of technology they could acquire. No prototype, no fragment was too small to dissect. They broke apart salvage drives, traced alien circuitry, and ran endless simulations to understand the principles behind the superior systems they had encountered. What others saw as hopeless backwardness, humans treated as a challenge to overcome, not a limit to accept. Behind closed doors, laboratories and bunkers and orbital facilities hummed around the clock. Earth's universities, think tanks, and corporations quietly competed and cooperated, pooling knowledge at a frantic pace. The pace itself puzzled the few alien observers who cared to look. Humans worked long hours, sacrificing comfort and personal lives without hesitation. No augmentation, no genetic modification drove this. It was raw willpower and an innate urgency they did not question or excuse. Alien analysts, when they bothered to assess humanity's industry, mistook this frenzy for desperation, a primitive civilization scrambling just to stay relevant. But that interpretation overlooked something deeper. Humans were not desperate, they were determined. Determined to learn, to close gaps, to understand and then surpass. Each system reverse-engineered, each concept deciphered, became a building block. They did not simply replicate alien devices, they improved them. Where the original designs relied on technologies perfected over millennia, humans found shortcuts, replacements, efficiencies the original designers never considered because they had no need to. This relentless effort was driven by their history. Earth had always been a crucible of adversity. War, famine, disease, natural disasters, and self-inflicted catastrophes had shaped humanity's collective psyche. Survival was never guaranteed, so adaptation became instinct. When presented with alien challenges, this instinct turned into an advantage few recognized. Where other species found comfort in stability and tradition, humans thrived in change and uncertainty. It was not in their nature to plateau, they climbed, always. Even their psychology became a weapon. Human engineers and soldiers alike embraced failure as part of the process. They tested and iterated rapidly, without the shame other cultures might feel at imperfection. In failure, humans learn faster. This trait baffled alien observers, who viewed mistakes as dishonorable or inefficient. Humans treated each setback as another step toward mastery. A single example spread quietly among alien intelligence networks. An orbital mining drone, captured from a minor galactic power, should have taken decades for a pre-warp species like humans to replicate. Instead, within months, they not only replicated it but made it lighter, more durable, and capable of operating in harsher environments. The improvements were small but significant. The lesson ignored by most, humans did not simply copy, they innovated from weakness. Their workforce's flexibility further confounded their few watchers. Specialists became generalists as needed. An aerospace engineer might learn xenolinguistics to decode a control interface. A programmer would master plasma physics to refine a power system. Barriers between disciplines dissolved wherever a problem demanded it. This intellectual versatility created unexpected breakthroughs that no alien strategist anticipated. Their soldiers trained in parallel. Humans adapted their tactics and doctrines not to match alien capabilities, but to counter them. They studied alien physiology, weaponry, and combat methods, searching for vulnerabilities no other species bothered to hide. Humans lacked the brute strength of the Skor or the psychic talents of the Kshani, but they compensated by preparing for every scenario in ways that seemed obsessive, even paranoid, to outside observers. Their endurance became legendary among those few who glimpsed it. Human crews volunteered for missions lasting far beyond normal limits, tolerating isolation, deprivation, and danger without the medical interventions or enhancements other species required. They rotated through hardships almost casually, driven by some intangible but powerful sense of purpose. They endured because that was what they had always done. Economic analysts within the council debated Earth's spending patterns and dismissed them as reckless. Earth poured resources into research and development at rates that seemed unsustainable. Infrastructure projects to retrofit planetary defenses, construct shipyards, and develop new industries advanced at breakneck speeds, leaving even their allies bewildered. But the galaxy misunderstood the reason. Earth was not attempting to catch up, it was preparing for something no one else saw coming. Trade delegations masked these preparations behind a facade of polite commerce and diplomatic charm. Earth's leaders played the part of the eager newcomers, deflecting suspicion, while quietly laying the groundwork for what was to come. Every agreement, every trade deal, every cooperative research program was a puzzle piece fitting into a larger strategy. Each delay or setback in negotiation only bought time that humans used well. Amid this, humanity never sought pity, never asked for protection. They absorbed insults and mockery with outward humility and inward resolve. Their patience was not passive, it was calculating. They tolerated condescension because it concealed their progress. The galaxy looked elsewhere while humanity became something new, something no longer weak, no longer a joke, no longer irrelevant. It began with a single incident, one so minor by galactic standards that it barely warranted a footnote in official records. A merchant clan, emboldened by the Council's disdain for Earth, seized a human outpost on a mineral-rich moon under the pretext of unpaid debts. The seizure was swift, bloodless, and, to the Council, perfectly legal. The merchant clan broadcast its success openly, mocking Earth's inability to defend its claim and warning other species not to waste resources trading with such weaklings. To most observers, this was just another demonstration of humanity's place in the galactic hierarchy, low, powerless, and ripe for exploitation. But this time, Earth did not submit. The response came without warning, without the ponderous declarations and diplomatic appeals expected from a minor power. Within hours of the broadcast, the entire merchant fleet orbiting that moon vanished from all communications networks. Probes dispatched to investigate found only debris fields and the irradiated husks of warships, their hulls torn open by unfamiliar weapons. For the first time, the galaxy glimpsed something it had never seen from humans: precision, ruthlessness, and technological parity. The attack had been executed with a level of planning and efficiency that stunned even the most battle-hardened strategists. There had been no warning shots, no ultimatums. Earth had acted decisively, without hesitation or hesitation's hallmark, diplomacy. The Council convened an emergency session, shocked less by the loss of ships than by the fact that humanity had struck first, and struck well. No species had predicted that humans could orchestrate such an assault, let alone possess weapons capable of bypassing advanced shielding and targeting systems. Analysts pored over wreckage, struggling to identify the weapon signatures. Human innovation had not merely caught up, it had diverged. The Council had been preparing for familiar tactics, but Earth's approach was asymmetric, unpredictable, and surgically effective. Reports filtered in from the edges of human-controlled space. Small human fleets, comprised of vessels that had never appeared on galactic registries, moved rapidly and with purpose. Where galactic powers relied on grand armadas and rigid formations, human ships struck like hunters, exploiting every weakness, bypassing every defensive line. No two engagements were alike. They adapted mid-battle, changing formations, tactics, and even objectives based on shifting circumstances. This adaptability sowed confusion and fear. Alien commanders accustomed to predictable opponents found themselves outmaneuvered repeatedly. Traditional doctrines failed as human forces refused to play by established rules. They feigned retreats only to ambush pursuers. They struck supply chains rather than front lines. They deployed decoys that mimicked civilian traffic but concealed devastating firepower. Every strategy was unconventional. Every move was calculated to exploit the complacency the galaxy had nurtured for decades. But what truly terrified observers was the psychological shift in humanity's posture. The same species once laughed at for its optimism and naivety now operated with cold precision. Their actions communicated not rage or vengeance but clarity. They would not tolerate further insult or aggression, and they would not ask permission to assert themselves. Intelligence services rushed to reassess their models, but even their fastest analyses lagged behind events. Human advances came too quickly. Each encounter revealed another layer of preparation. Earth's militaries had been drilling for scenarios that no one thought possible. They had anticipated that one day, the galaxy might overstep, and they had planned not merely to defend but to dominate. Meanwhile, human industries shifted seamlessly into wartime production. Manufacturing centers that had once produced commercial goods now rolled out warships and weapons at speeds that astonished even their own allies. Earth's industrial infrastructure, thought to be a weakness, became a strength. Where other species relied on centuries-old megafactories, humans rapidly constructed modular facilities, spreading their production across planets, moons, and orbital stations. This decentralization made it impossible to cripple their war effort with a single blow. Messages began to circulate quietly among council delegates, expressing doubt and fear. Old assumptions crumbled in days. The idea that humans lacked the resilience or sophistication to wage interstellar war was proven false. Their strategies were built on centuries of study, experimentation, and adaptation. They used their historical disadvantages as fuel for innovation. Throughout these early engagements, humanity never made grand pronouncements or declarations of intent. Their silence was as chilling as their sudden competence. Every action spoke clearly. The era of condescension was over. The galaxy had assumed that humans were weak because they had not yet fought back. That assumption had failed catastrophically. In private chambers and secure channels, the question began to spread, whispered but urgent. If this was only the beginning, how far were the humans willing to go? No one had an answer, and that uncertainty became a weapon in itself. Fear began to replace mockery, and uncertainty began to replace arrogance. The balance of power had shifted, and the galaxy, for the first time, understood that Earth had never been irrelevant. They had simply been waiting for a reason to act. The first strikes had shattered assumptions, but what followed dismantled the very foundations of galactic strategy. Humanity did not stop after reclaiming its outposts and eliminating the merchant fleet. They escalated with speed and purpose that left entire military commands scrambling. The Council, long accustomed to wars dragging on through attrition and negotiation, found itself watching a campaign that unfolded with relentless precision. Human fleets, smaller but faster and more versatile than their counterparts, surged into regions thought too remote for meaningful combat. They struck supply depots, listening posts, and undefended shipyards, inflicting crippling damage on infrastructure that had never been fortified against what was assumed an inferior species. Their ships, once thought laughably primitive, moved with uncanny coordination. Each engagement revealed adaptations, improvements, systems evolving in real time as if every battle was a live experiment. Alien commanders attempted to counter with overwhelming numbers, but human tactics defied expectation. They refused traditional engagements, never offering the decisive fleet battle the Council desired. Instead, they divided their forces into agile strike groups, vanishing into deep space only to appear light years away, hitting secondary and tertiary targets with perfect timing. Supply lines that had stood untouched for centuries were severed in days. Economic models collapsed as entire sectors lost contact with their logistical hubs. Human ground forces displayed the same ruthlessness. They did not seek territorial conquest. Their goal was disruption, and they achieved it with chilling efficiency. Where traditional powers engaged in lengthy sieges and ceremonial declarations, humans used surgical raids, deploying small but elite units that dismantled defenses, neutralized leadership, and disappeared before any response could be mounted. Their mastery of asymmetry and speed disoriented defenders who had spent generations preparing for formal conflicts. A deeper terror gripped their enemies as it became clear that humans had tailored their entire doctrine around alien weaknesses. Score warriors, who relied on brute strength and close combat, found themselves defeated before closing the distance. Kshani psychic networks, which once read intentions and manipulated diplomacy effortlessly, failed completely against human unpredictability. No clear patterns to exploit, no predictable desires to manipulate. Human innovation extended beyond combat. They weaponized information. Propaganda tailored to alien cultures appeared across networks, undermining morale and sowing distrust among allied powers. In regions where unity had been taken for granted, dissent spread like wildfire. Alliances strained as human operatives exposed scandals, covert deals, and hidden agendas long buried by political elites. In council meetings, panic replaced arrogance. No unified counter-strategy emerged. Alien powers, so long reliant on superior technology and well-worn doctrines, struggled to adapt. Their militaries were built on tradition and hierarchy. Human forces, in contrast, operated with decentralized autonomy, empowering officers at every level to make decisions and exploit fleeting opportunities. This flexibility magnified their effectiveness far beyond their numbers. Even more disturbing was humanity's willingness to absorb losses without hesitation or pause. Where other species clung to every warship as a precious artifact, humans treated vessels as expendable assets in service of larger objectives. Every lost ship was a lesson analyzed and improved upon. Every destroyed squad was a data point contributing to a larger picture. The Council watched in horror as human fleets returned to battle, not diminished, but more dangerous, faster, sharper, better equipped. Earth's industrial machine kept pace. While alien factories waited for orders, human industries anticipated needs, churning out replacement vessels and munitions faster than expected. What the galaxy had seen as Earth's vulnerability, its aggressive industrialization, had transformed into an engine of war that adapted and expanded in real time. There was no pause, no hesitation. Humanity was not merely responding to aggression, it was redefining warfare itself. Diplomatic channels filled with demands for explanation, pleas for negotiation, even threats of collective action. Humanity answered none of them. The silence was deliberate, leaving their adversaries to speculate, panic, and argue amongst themselves. Divisions deepened as some species advocated immediate surrender, while others proposed an impossible escalation. The Council's unity, long considered unbreakable, began to fracture under the pressure. Throughout all of this, humanity maintained a terrifying clarity of purpose. They did not seek destruction for its own sake. Their strikes were calculated, never wasteful. They dismantled only what was necessary to cripple opposition, proving their dominance without resorting to genocide or total annihilation. It was this restraint, paradoxically, that unnerved their adversaries most. Humanity was not acting from rage or revenge. They acted because they could, and because they had planned for this moment for far longer than anyone had realized. By the time the Council understood the scale of what was unfolding, the offensive had achieved its deeper objective, not just to defeat alien militaries, but to rewrite the very perception of what humanity was capable of. Where once there had been mockery, there was now fear, and that fear spread faster than any fleet. When the final offensive ended, the galaxy no longer viewed Earth with amusement or dismissal. The campaigns had not merely pushed back the merchant clans or scattered the fleets of arrogant powers, they had redefined the balance of power itself. No longer did council delegates smirk when human representatives entered chambers. They now watched in silence, cautious and uncertain, aware that every assumption they had clung to was obsolete. Humanity did not demand surrender. Instead, they imposed terms crafted not from spite but from pragmatic dominance. Trade routes were redrawn to favor Earth and its emerging allies. Formerly untouchable corporations found their monopolies shattered, their infrastructure in ruins, and their political influence eroded. Human negotiators offered contracts, not ultimatums, but the conditions were clear: equality in all dealings or no dealings at all. The implication needed no clarification. Any further disrespect would trigger responses the galaxy was no longer eager to provoke. The transformation was stark. Human diplomats spoke with quiet confidence, no longer seeking approval but setting expectations. What had once been dismissed as naive ambition now rang with earned authority. The galaxy's most ancient empires, accustomed to dictating terms, found themselves adjusting to the reality of human expectations. Councils and cabinets debated how to engage with a species that no longer sought entry into the club of great powers. They had forced their way in and rearranged the furniture. Fear became a common thread in private communications between species that had once mocked Earth. Some worried about the speed of human adaptation. Others whispered about the long-term consequences of their industrial expansion. What frightened them most, however, was humanity's restraint. Throughout the conflict, Earth had wielded its newfound power with chilling discipline. Entire worlds could have been glassed, entire fleets annihilated, but humans had stopped at decisive victory. This discipline suggested not mercy but calculation, as if humanity had already planned how far they needed to go, and had gone exactly that far, no more, no less. New classifications appeared in security briefings across dozens of governments. Where humanity had once been tagged as harmless, they were now classified as a strategic threat of the highest order. Old stereotypes no longer applied. No one underestimated human endurance, ingenuity, or aggression now. The phrase, human persistence, became shorthand for a challenge that would only escalate if ignored. Military academies rewrote entire curricula to include case studies on Earth's strategies, while intelligence agencies commissioned urgent studies on human culture, psychology, and history, subjects they had long dismissed as irrelevant. Beyond the political and military recalibration, a cultural shift took hold. Human art, literature, and media flooded markets once closed to them. What had once been exotic curiosities became must-have commodities. Species who had ridiculed human creativity now sought to understand it, hoping for insight into the force that had propelled Earth from irrelevance to dominance in a single generation. The demand for human advisors, consultants, and engineers surged as corporations and governments alike scrambled to learn from the very species they had dismissed. Earth itself transformed in parallel. Freed from the need for validation, human civilization turned its talents inward, refining its industries, sciences, and societies with the same relentless focus it had applied to war. Where once humanity had sought to catch up, it now pulled ahead in critical technologies, adaptive manufacturing, distributed intelligence networks, and flexible logistics systems that outclassed even the oldest galactic powers. Earth's leadership did not speak of empire or conquest. They spoke of partnerships, but partnerships where humans would lead, not follow. Even the most powerful civilizations, those untouched by direct conflict, altered their posture toward humanity. Embassies expanded their delegations, and long-ignored treaties were renegotiated to include Earth as an equal partner or, increasingly, a senior one. Alliances shifted as lesser species, sensing the winds of change, realigned themselves with Earth to secure favorable positions in the emerging order. Human influence spread not through conquest but through competence and credibility, achieved at the point of a sword but maintained through respect. What the galaxy finally understood was that humanity's greatest weapon had never been its ships or soldiers, but its refusal to accept limitations imposed by others. Their weakness had been their shield, their adaptability their spear. Where other species plateaued, humanity had ascended precisely because it had been underestimated and excluded. And so the records of the Council were updated. No longer categorized as irrelevant, no longer patronized as a quaint curiosity, Earth now appeared in official archives with a new designation, a primary power, unpredictable, unyielding, and dangerous, but necessary. Where once, human, had been a punchline, it became a warning whispered among diplomats and generals alike. In the silence that followed the last campaign, a simple truth remained: humanity had never needed permission to rise. All they had required was a reason. Now the galaxy would live with the consequences of giving them one.